طبعا أنا حاولت أني أعد هذه الحلقة حلقة منفصلة بدون أخصائية، لكن ما قدرت لأن أنا نفسي وايد خايفة من موضوع التنمر على أطفال التوحد، بالأخص بنتي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حلقة جديدة مع كوكب التوحد المرح. اليوم حلقتنا عن التنمر. طبعا أنا حاولت أني أعد هذه الحلقة حلقة منفصلة بدون أخصائية، لكن ما قدرت لأن أنا نفسي وايد خايفة من موضوع التنمر على أطفال التوحد، بالأخص بنتي. أفكر إن لما تكبر إيش راح يصير معها موضوع التنمر في المدارس، لأن أي طفل أو أي إنسان يتعرض للتنمر، بس في حالة طفلي وأطفالنا اللي فيهم توحد يعني نفكر أكثر بالموضوع. المهم قلت دام الأخصائية موجودة خلينا نسألها عن موضوع التنمر، فتعالوا معاي عشان نشوف شنو قالت الأخصائية عن موضوع التنمر. أول شيء حابة أرحب بوجودك معنا مرة ثانية وثالثة ورابعة، لأن أنتي جوهرة صراحة. Again with Barbara. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
موضوعنا عن التنمر. ممكن تتكلمين عن التنمر بشكل مختصر اللي ممكن يتعرض له طفل التوحد؟
So I think that bullying is definitely there. I think sometimes kids are not able to, they don't realize when they're getting bullied, and then other times they do realize when they're getting bullied and they don't have an outlet. Bullying is something that, of course, we advocate for it to be changed and to have repercussions for bullying and things like that, and that's been a huge movement over the past 10 years or so. But even today in the autistic community, with the clients that I've had the honor to work with and things like that, sometimes they don't realize that they're getting bullied, and when they do realize it, they don't have anybody to talk to about it. I think it's important that these communities stay connected, so the children and adults with autism, that they have a form of being able to communicate that with one another, because maybe the things that they have gotten bullied about, neurotypical individuals may not understand. It's a lot of different factors that go into that, but being able to have that outlet to where you can communicate and talk to a person about it, and being able to, even at school, being able to go to your counselor or go to your teacher and be able to say those things. And then when you have situations where they cannot communicate, or they don't have effective forms of communication, I do think that's where those skill acquisition skills come into play, being able to teach that child different forms of communication. If they don't have it, paying enough attention to them to know that something is not right or that they are not comfortable. It may be they do good in all of their academics except for one class, and they keep getting an F in this class, or they don't want to do their homework, or they complain that they don't want to go. It could be PE or anything like that. But just being able to actually pay attention to them and have those certain accommodations in place for that child.
على حسب ما سمعت منك إن إحنا لازم ننظر للعلامات اللي قد تشير أن الطفل يتعرض للتنمر في المكان اللي هو فيه بعيد عن العائلة.
Sometimes kids even neurotypical kids, they may not feel comfortable changing in front of another person, and that may be a requirement at school for physical education. And neurotypical children may be a little bit more easier to kind of get over those I don't want to say get over, but to to be able to do those certain things at that certain time versus a child with autism. They may end up having a meltdown or have a tantrum, or have certain behaviors may arise just because they are just not comfortable and they don't want to do it. And I think being able to advocate for them in that way, to say, okay, well, maybe they don't have to change their clothes in PE. I mean, they don't, if they can effectively do physical education with their clothes that they currently have on, I think that is completely okay.
هل هناك تنمر جسدي قد يتعرض لطفل التوحد؟
That's definitely possible, and I think it happens more than we probably are all aware of. And in that situation, I think that's where it comes down to paying attention to your child, because sometimes, go back to the fact that children with special needs are more prone to abuse, like bullying, abuse, neglect, and those things. So for them to be able to tell you, or for you to be able to notice that something is not right with them, I think we all find ways to communicate the best of our ability, and just paying attention to them to realize that maybe their shoulders hurting, asking, wondering, well, did you were you riding on your skateboard, or were you walking, or what happened, and things like that. And then also community. I would have to say it's the biggest thing, because whereas a child may not feel comfortable coming to their parents or their teachers or something like that, they will probably feel more comfortable going to their peers. So being able to be supported and backed by those communities, to know that to be able to have an outlet is really important.
ممكن نتفادى تعرض الطفل للتنمر بشكل عام يعني.
So what I utilize a lot is social scenarios with kiddos whenever we're teaching them different things, and in that situation, because oftentimes we don't, we're not there when it actually happens. So being able to utilize social scenarios, you can do that with a book, you can do that with videos, and then if you have a place where you could do like a social group, put your child in a social group setting, that would be really helpful as well, because sometimes, like I said, kids, autistic or not autistic, they end up being bullies or end up getting bullied. And in a situation like that, knowing what that looks like, I think is very crucial, because some of them don't know or recognize that that's happening. So being able to actually teach something and say, hey, this person is being rude, or this person is being mean to you, or like giving a social script or a social scenario and say, what would you do in this situation, or teaching them probably the most appropriate way to respond to that. I think for the most part, those things really help with, because I think bullying is going to always be a possibility.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people should make their child fit in to be more normal to avoid bullying either. I think that there are effective ways that you could teach a child to, have certain accommodations in place for them to be able to maybe go not as, I guess, as noticeable per se, but still they should be able to do things that they love.
Be comfortable, be themselves.
Yeah, and be themselves, because
بما أنك معالجة وأخصائية في سلوك أطفال التوحد، هل مر عليك حالة من طفل في توحد تعرض للتنمر، وشنو كان الحل؟
So I've experienced bullying with a lot of my clients, and for the ones that can communicate, we talked about it in the sense of, okay, first, did they recognize that was bullying? And if not, going back to what bullying was, and then also repeating that scenario until they felt like they were able to kind of stick up for themselves, doing a lot of like self-management teaching methods, as well as going over different social scripts to where they felt like, okay, if I say this, I would feel comfortable, this would make me feel like I'm gaining that power back, or I have more control, or whatever they may have been seeking to feel in those moments. And also just reiterating to make sure that they communicate with somebody to let that person know what's going on. Because sometimes you have kids that don't stick up for themselves, but it take that person to kind of stand up for them. So I guess in the situation with the hero friends in the schools, just knowing that, hey, this person do have somebody that's advocating for them, I think it's crucial, because regardless of how much you teach a child, they may or may not be comfortable to stand up for themselves. So making sure that they communicate and they don't hold it inside, because that part, it leads to a lot of different things that's not healthy or safe for them. That's what I do whenever I have situations with clients that are getting bullied. And a lot of times in situations where I have clients that may experience bullying that don't communicate, I mean, of course that's a little more challenging, that's harder. So it's really like the parents getting together and they're going up to the schools and they're advocating for these kids, and making sure that they feel just as inviting, you know, with the environment as the other kids. So yeah, so it's definitely a situation, but we go wherever we're needed. We need to talk to principals, we need to talk to schools, need to talk to staff, daycares, wherever, you know, and or the kids if they are able to communicate with us. Yeah, because sometimes, like I said, sometimes kids don't know that that's happening, but parents realize it. Right? Yeah. Like parents know, like my kid is getting bullied, and we go in and we make sure that we communicate with the people that we need to, and that puts a stop to things, because you don't want your child going to a different place or feeling uncomfortable at school, or any other setting. You don't want them to feel uncomfortable and not being able to actually tell you, like, this is what's going on that makes me feel uncomfortable.
شيء جميل. يعني أنت تقدرين تتدخلين في موضوع التنمر، تروحين المدرسة وتبلغين عن حالة التنمر، فالمدرسة تتخذ الإجراءات.
Changing, and they're putting more policies in place for bullying too, so I think that's a really good thing.
من كلامك فهمت أن طفل التوحد يحتاج أنه يتكلم، يتواصل مع اللي موجودين معه في البيت أو الشخص اللي يرعى هذا الطفل، لازم يتكلم معه ويفتح معه مواضيع علشان الطفل يفضفض، ومنها نقدر نعرف هل الطفل يتعرض للتنمر ونوع التنمر وكيفية حل التنمر. فإذا أهم نقطة تواصل مع طفل التوحد.
Yeah, that's a very important part. They need to talk. They need to tell you. They need to express it, so you will know there's a problem going on, and then we can take it from there.
Yes.
That's good. Thank you so much for today, and I know I took a lot of time from you.
That's okay.
You have a full schedule.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, because I know that all the women that are watching, they are getting a lot of good information from a very good source.
الحين حابة أني أشكرك على وجودك معاي مرة ثانية وإعطائنا هذه المعلومات القيمة. نلقاك في حلقة قادمة.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Awesome. And thank you for having me.
يا أمهات، شفتوا الحلقة وسمعتوا للأخصائية، وعلى فكرة حابة أقول لكم الترجمة موجودة، بس لو تضغطون على علامة CC اللي موجودة على الشاشة نفسها، شاشة اليوتيوب، تقدرون تلقون الترجمة على طول تنزل أثناء كلام الأخصائية. النقطة الثانية أن لا تنسون الشير، لايك، سبسكرايب أرجوكم علشان تشجعوني وأجيب لكم مواضيع مهمة تخص التوحد، أو إذا محتاجين إني أتكلم في موضوع معين كتبوا بالكومنتس تحت، وأنا راح أحاول إني أجاوب على الأسئلة أو إني أجيب مختص يجاوب. شكرا للمتابعة، إن شاء الله تكون حلقة مفيدة للجميع، ومع السلامة وإلى اللقاء.